important quote with you guys. Has anyone heard of this before? So it's the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your questions. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to oversell this talk or anything, but this could change your life potentially. So I wanted to just say this because, you know, as you all may know, like we're always being judged, and really we're being judged especially by our questions. I mean, good questions they really are like a competency trigger. They're a learning tool. They're also an empathy building tool. I'm sure all of us have used questions to understand the other side better. And fortunately, they're also a skill. So you don't have to be great at it. You could always improve, and there's probably always room to improve. So I wanted us to go through and talk about what the important questions are at different levels of your career, but also talk about what are like the tools and tactics that you could use to better prepare yourself for PM interviews. So my biggest recommendation is think about building like a question toolbox. I mean, this could be anything that's physical paper or a file on your computer, but think about a place where you're going to draw from for common questions or questions that are important to you. And we're going to talk about this for most of the rest of this talk. When you have this, it's important to add to it or refine it as you're doing your research, and we'll talk about research in a little bit, but also it's important to go back and refine it after you've had interviews. So I'm personally probably a little bit OCD. When I go into interviews, I try to predict the questions that people are going to ask me, and I, write that out. I prepare my answers as best as I can, and then after I've had the interview, I like to debrief and go in and write out from what I can remember all the questions that were asked, and talk about ways where maybe I could have improved my answers. I've failed interviews before, so there's definitely been places that have been big stepping stones for me to learn more and practice more to interview and ask better questions. So I do think if you have a little bit of time to do that, it's really important after you've had an interview to do a little retrospective, a little self-reflection on, even if you did really well, what could have gone better if you had anticipated some of the questions that you were asked. And I'm sure most of us probably know this already, but it's always a good reminder. Don't ask questions that you could easily find an answer for online, and depending on the companies you're looking at, you could probably guess those kind of questions. Publicly listed companies probably have tons of information about them, but as you know more than well, like a quick Google search can unearth so many things about a company. So having said that, where do you start your research? I'm guessing some of you do this already, but initially you just want to understand the company basics. So what does the company do? You probably already know that or you wouldn't be applying there. Where is it located? How does it make money? Is it profitable? How big is the product team? What are the products that are building? I'm kind of listing these off quickly because chances are if you're applying to these companies, you probably know some of these things really well. But if you step back and think about some of the companies that you're very familiar with or that you are interested in working with, you could ask yourself, do I understand their business model? Just with all the apps and things we use nowadays, you may think, okay, well, advertising revenue is how they stay profitable, but could you think a little bit more deeply about what is their business model? Where is revenue coming from? How have they structured themselves? Even if it's a nonprofit, you could probably think, what is making this company sustainable? So these are just some of the basics. Hopefully you're already doing this ahead of your interviews, but again, you could type this up if that makes you feel more prepared, just something to get an understanding of who the company is. The other thing about the product team is, although you may be working with a recruiter, although you may know some of these companies have a product team, could you find anything through LinkedIn about how big the product team is? Do they have an about page online that shows you, that there's a head of product and X many people that work underneath that person? So there's still a little bit you can dig in and probably find about the product team there. And this question may seem a little overly obvious, but why are they building the products they are building? Again, I think, especially in this modern day age of digital products, it's not always obvious why companies choose the features that they choose. Like, can you anticipate why they're building the things they're building in the ways that aren't always so obvious? The next set of questions are things that I think are like absolute company essentials. Like the first one's the basics, you're probably already doing it. The next one's the essentials, and I hope this becomes just regular practice for you to think about. But the really important questions here are, what is the company mission and vision? So, does this company even have a mission and vision? Not all companies do. I think some companies, particularly startups, start out with maybe like a cool idea and they're trying to see if it has traction. And that's okay, that's great. They're still figuring it out. But I'm gonna guess that just about every single company here has gotten to a point of growth where they said, okay, at this point we need a mission and vision. And that's something that I think should just absolutely be part of your core research. One, does it exist? Two, what is it? The third point there is, are they actually using this mission and vision? Some companies have a mission, but it's overly broad or generic. It may not feel like very applicable to what they're doing. Other companies actually bring it up constantly. They bring it up either in corporate filings, they bring it up in public meetings. I think Facebook, when they do their annual product announcements, they talk about where they're shifting their focus to. So think about, is this company actually using their mission and vision to guide them in their product development and product strategy? And we're going to go in here through like a few examples of companies with a really explicit mission and vision, but also think about companies or companies that you want to work for. And if you know of any that know of their mission and vision offhand, please share, because I'm curious to know like how familiar we are with companies and their mission. So, a company like Uber, I think originally they were thought of as you can get a ride with a click of a button, and that was kind of like their catchphrase of how they grew. Their mission, as far as like their website says, and their latest one that I could find is transportation as reliable as running water everywhere for everyone. We're going to go through a couple more examples. Tesla's mission, it's to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. Notice here, like in the missions, like they're not telling you how they're going to do it. They're not going to tell you what they're going to do it. They just have this North Star about how they're going to make the world a better place. Walt Disney Company, to entertain, inform, and inspire people around the globe through the power of unparalleled storytelling, reflecting the iconic brands, creative minds, and innovative technologies that make ours the world's premier entertainment company. If you're joining this company, you probably know the stuff that they're aiming for, and this is pretty clear. They're telling you they want to work with iconic brands, they want to work with creatives, and they want to be unparalleled storytellers. Like, that's inspiring. I bring up these three examples not because you have to like them, but because I hope that if you're out assessing companies or looking for jobs and roles, when you consider the mission, really ask yourself, is this mission something that I want to spend 50 hours a week thinking about? And maybe 50 hours is conservative for some companies and some roles. There are certain companies, maybe ones that shall not be named, that famously have longer work hours. So if you're thinking about their mission, is that something that interests you? Is that something that you want to think about, for 50, 60, 80 hours a day? I would love to say I leave work at home at the end of the day, but it seeps into my evenings and weekends. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I enjoy it. Like, I like thinking about those things. And I leave you with this because I hope you enjoy it too when you consider a company's mission and vision as well. So, assuming you've done your basic research, you know the company's mission, and let's say you're happy with it. So now you want to find out a little bit more about the team there, who you're going to work with. So you're doing a little bit of research about the product teams. We're going to get into what this means at different levels of your career, but broadly, try and get a sense of how are the product teams structured. some companies have written lots of blog posts and lots of coverage on this. The popular ones are companies like TransferWise, Spotify. You've probably heard terms like product squads, they're mixing departments, like they might have a designer, the engineering team, an analyst, a product manager. They'll tell you that they mix like that and focus on a certain area. So you're trying to understand what is the shape of the product and engineering team there, and how do they organize themselves around their product? Is there like a mobile team, or is there a team that's built around a certain KPI? Is it a certain part of the product, like payments? You're in charge of the payment flow, but you're in charge of the payment flow across web, iOS, Android. So try to understand what's like the slice of the product or product area that role is for. And how do the teams work? This is really, really important, and probably, now I think it's important at every stage of your product career, but it's really important to know, how do the teams work together? How do they collaborate? Is it a collaborative process? Who else is on that team that is a strong voice? Do you have a partner there if you're a PM on the team? So who else is on the team? How do we work? And then maybe also a good question to ask, depending on the role and the opportunity, is, why did the previous person leave? Hopefully it had nothing to do with the team or the company, maybe just an interesting opportunity came up, but better to know up front. So once we know a little bit about the teams, a little bit about the company, now we're going to break down a little bit more according to questions for each level of your product career. One thing I want to pause and note here is that this isn't like absolutely hard set rules. Depending on the companies you join, some of these questions might come at you sooner, some of these might come at you later. If you're joining a very small company where you have a lot of responsibility, or maybe you're the only product manager or the first product manager, you might be asking these questions that here higher up the career ladder, but really are still relevant to you. So don't take this as an absolutely hard rule. This is just a general guidance for what you should be thinking about in your product career. So, as some of you mentioned, you're trying to get into product or looking into your first role as a product manager. I think that's really, really exciting. Like, the best part about that is you're still figuring out what you like. You're still testing things out. I think like the blessing and the challenge, as you've had a few years of experience, is like you get picky, like you're like, oh no, I don't want anything less than 3 developers, like you've seen some things, you're like, I definitely am looking for something. So I think that's a really exciting time, is when you're an associate, you're more junior. Like initially when you're entering product, you're trying to show what are the things you're capable of, like what's your potential, and everybody has that. Later on in your career, you're trying to like show more like, here's the products you've delivered, here's the impact it made, or here's the strategy you've delivered, this is the strategy you've set forth. Really high in the career ladder, you're probably talking about how you've enabled teams to build products, and how you've scaled teams to execute on strategy. So starting at the very early stages of a product career, the important things to ask are, what's the product area I'll be working on? When you join, you're probably going to have like some specific feature, or maybe a subset of a feature. So just know like what is it that you'll be working on, and who will I be working on it with? If you're joining as a junior, it's probably important to know who the person is that you'll be reporting into. Are they your manager? Are they your mentor? And how much guidance will you have along the way? I mean, some of us would like a little bit more direction every step of the way. Some of us would want just some instructions and to be set off and let me figure it out, let me do my work. And yeah, somebody might want something in between. But this is a great time to establish like, how closely are you working with that person who's there to manage you? And if you're joining a team, like Who else is on that team? Are they more junior, more senior? What's the team dynamics here? It's also probably good to think about asking what is the growth trajectory for that role. Again, sometimes if you're joining a smaller company, there might be a very obvious place and opportunity for you to step up, particularly if there isn't a lot of other product managers. If you're joining a much bigger company, you might have 5 different levels of junior product manager, or when you get to the mid-level product manager at companies like Apple, at companies like Google and Facebook, they have. And I might not get the titles exactly right, but it's like product manager 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're, yeah, you know how it is, right?
Grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Complex.
But they're clearly defined there, when you go there, at least you're very clear on like what happens between those levels and what the expectations are. If you're just starting out, you just want to have a sense of wherever you are, what does the career trajectory look like? The mid-level product managers. Similarly, again, you still want to know what is the size and shape of the product and engineering team. At this point, you've probably shipped some products and features, so you might have some strong opinions or not about how a team is shipping. So you do want to get a sense of how is the team that you're going to work on, how are they shipping, who's responsible for shipping. I want to pause on that question a little bit because I do think different companies have a different ethos around this. At some companies you go to, they'll say it's the product manager's job to ship, like you are there to ship. That might be the case. I don't think it's right or wrong. My personal issue with that is I think anytime any one person on the team, regardless of if it's PM or somebody else, anytime one person is like the end-all be-all responsible for shipping, is like you've created a single point of failure. My personal philosophy, and you don't have to accept it, is that the team is responsible for shipping. Like, as a product manager, you want to clear the path, you want to clear obstacles, you want to answer all the unanswered questions for the team, you want to make it clear what you're trying to deliver. But personally, I don't think the product manager is singularly responsible for shipping. You're responsible for all the things around it that enable it. So, again, you don't have to agree, different companies have a different view on it, but just something to consider. Who is responsible for shipping? Where do product ideas come from? Are they top down? Are they bottom up? Those of you who are already product managers, are you able to answer that right now? Like in your companies, like where do product ideas come from? Does anyone want to?
Strategy. Strategy?
Okay. Top down. Always?
No.
Okay, so you have some freedom.
Sometimes brainstorming and some idea works or something from there. Something is wrong in online competitions, right? So without time, so yeah.
Absolutely. And I think realistically, there's probably a mix of both at companies, but depending on how you want to work, maybe you're looking for a place where it's driven more by the team. Maybe you are looking for a place where it's driven by the strategy, it is agreed upon, or maybe at a high level some of these ideas are set by the management team or another team, but just having an awareness of where those ideas come from. When I was at Crowdcube, they are a financially regulated platform. So one of the things is did they come top down or bottom up? They came sideways. They came from not even within the company, because financial regulations change. Yeah, and as I'm sure many of you have experienced it, with things like GDPR come in.
Let's say open banking and PSD2, all this.
Open banking,
Yeah.
PSD2, absolutely, and suddenly, these product ideas are coming from all over outside of your organization. So again, just something to be aware of and maybe relative to the industry you're looking to go into. The next one is how do you gather and act on customer feedback? I'm going to take it as a given that all companies, or the ones you're interviewing at, are collecting customer feedback, but that might not be the case. Someone might be a younger company, or they might be a company who's just created a product team, or they might be collecting customer feedback, but maybe not specifically about a product or the product that you're working on. So it's good to clarify, are they collecting customer feedback, and what are they doing with it? I mean, I've seen, not in my current role, but I've seen product teams who say, yeah, we have an NPS score, and like, if you dig a little bit further, like, great, how do you incorporate that back into like your backlog and your priorities? And I've heard like, oh yeah, it's not really driven by our team, so some other team is handling, the NPS, or some other team's responsible for it. And it was just, I mean, it was odd, like, but you're collecting the feedback, like certainly, don't you want to use it? So just something important to consider. Are you collecting feedback? How is that actually feeding back into your product backlog? And then, who are the stakeholders, and how do they influence the backlog? Stakeholders shouldn't be a dirty word, I hope. Hopefully this will come back on. Stakeholders are effectively the other people you're working with, but it is good to know if you're at a company that maybe has a strong sales team, or maybe has a strong legal team or a marketing team, like how do you work with them? Are they embedded with your product and engineering team? Are they in your discussions when you plan out your backlog and your sprints? How do they actually influence the product strategy and